Hello, Internet. I'm Corione, your witch in residence here on YouTube. And I'm back from my brief hiatus. Um, and one of the things that came up recently that I saw that, I thought was kind of interesting to talk about, especially because we're going to be getting a movie about them very soon, is the video game Helldivers 2. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with the game, it is very heavily influenced by Paul Verhoeven's version of Starship Troopers, where I want to call it like the friendly version of fascism is playing out, where the state and the military basically has control over society, but they practice it in a way that makes it feel like it's okay and it's exciting to actually be part of this fascist agenda. Okay? The video game does this to great effect about how they you are defending Earth from the tyranny of the bugs and the inhuman monster that is the automatons. And now that they've added it as well, the very very evil mind controlling Illuminate. The interesting part is throughout the game, they, if you have the time, they've sprinkled the lore in there to explain that the humans actually intentionally provoked the bugs routinely because they produce a liquid that is actually the fuel for faster than light travel. And they realize that if they continuously stress the bugs will produce more of this fuel. So the actual reason why the bugs are the enemy has to do with they're being mined for oil, for lack of a better term. The automatons, these thinking robots, were created to serve man, and it was because of how brutally they were being treated that they are now fighting back and killing humans because of how unbelievably terrible we were treating them. And it turns out the Illuminate, and stop me if you've heard this one before, but they initially were beaten down, like attacked by humans, because humans were under the opinion that they had weapons of mass destruction that could destroy planets. Where have we heard that one before? That a group was invaded for weapons of mass destruction? I don't know. But at any rate, um, now we have a situation where in Helldivers 2, these factions are rising up again and getting out of control because, you know, humanity kind of started the fight. And the CEO has actually been called on by the UN to talk about methods for inoculating people against wanting to be part of a fascist dictatorship, because he was so good at convincing people that in this game world and everything that it was a good idea. And I'll be honest with you, I love the game. um I think the lore is fascinating. They've really done a good job at creating it out. And I know I'm playing the bad guy, but I'm fine with that in the game context because I'm not actually hurting anyone. If in real life it would be a completely different matter in my opinion. But um so the UN has actually asked them to start talking about ways to inoculate people against this kind of behavior and this kind of fascism, which I think is an important lesson that we could take away from learning that it turns out if you get people to play the foot soldiers in a evil regime, they're kind of, they're willing to be indoctrinated by it. And I thought that was an important piece to take away and something that we could really discuss if you guys are interested in discussing it more in the comments, is the idea that it's so easy to be indoctrinated into a fascist regime, like Helldivers, without really realizing that you're supporting it. And there have been a lot of comments about this, about why some people don't think they're playing the bad guys. Some of the arguments go, well, we don't have a choice in what we're doing. We're just there to play the game. And let's be honest, in Mussolini's Italy, the Italians didn't really have a choice either, right? You either would have accepted this regime at a young age, or you wouldn't have made it to fighting age, right? In in communist China, you either accept that communism is an important part of the philosophy at a young age, or you're not going to make it to old age, right? There are no old age dissidents that are living in China because they're not taught to be otherwise. There's no option to resist as you get older, right? You're not going to resist because you don't see a system outside of it. You're not given the option of a system outside of it. And from all that you read and see, it seems like it's the best solution, right? You can even make the argument that North Korea is a perfect textbook example of this. They're not given an option other than to worship dear leader. You worship dear leader, or you're put in a prison that will keep you and your next generations afterwards in there, where you will be treated terribly. But only bad people go there. So if you are resisting the state, then you must be bad. That's the takeaway. And nobody wants to be the bad guy. And that's the case in Helldivers 2. You don't want to be the bad guy, so you would never be... You're playing as a person who has drank the Kool-Aid and is defending Super Earth from these evil forces that are intent on annihilating it. But what you're not told is that Earth caused these problems, and that really the way this is all going down is like a population control method to make sure that they keep the stories of martyrs and whatnot going on. You're playing a faceless henchman of a very, very evil order. But you're doing it because you logically have no other choice. Your character is already indoctrinated, and you are doing your zealous best to do it. And I think that is a fantastic way to broach topics about modern fascism, which, let's be clear, the definition of fascism is when a industry, like, I don't know, car manufacturing, okay, is being pushed by the state, and the state is effectively in control of it. So if you have, say, a member of a government who controls an industry, like, say, I don't know, commercial space flight, okay? If they are the primary focus behind that, and there is no separation between the two, really, and resources are used from either side, from either the government side or the industrial side, to enable this control to continue or expand, that's basically fascism in a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, and there are certainly very evil concepts that go along with that and getting people to accept it. And I am saying for the record that I in no way condone that kind of behavior, but there it is. those components to it are what we're talking about here, right? In Helldivers 2, for example, FTL travel, faster than light travel, is limited to military use because they don't have enough of the special liquid from the bugs that they get that would allow them to enable, non-state actors to have the ability to travel freely between planets. At least that's what they tell you, right? So those components put together kind of make it evident or abundant and obvious as to what is going on in this game. And normally around this time in the video is when I would talk about, real world examples. And I used North Korea and I used, China. I want to also mention Russia because Russia is in a situation where they say there are elections, but the man on the street polls versus what's actually going on in their government are wildly different, right? People have the illusion of choice, but they don't really have it. So I would almost call it like, I don't know, a managed democracy, right? Um, where you think you're part of a democracy, but really other people are making the decisions regardless of what the vote is and claiming that the vote was theirs. And they are brutally attacking another country for its resources and using everything from really questionable, amoral tactics, spies, saboteurs, you name it, in order to pull off their agenda of taking over a sovereign nation because they need the resources. And normally, like I said, I would talk about what you can do about this. And when it comes to Russia, unless you're living there, I don't know there's much you can do other than not buying Russian products, doing your best to assist in tanking their economy, and doing your best to help in any way the people that are being attacked by this state, which is Ukraine. Um, and when the Russian people are suffering, because they absolutely are, trying to support the people, but not necessarily the government, right? Like, I will say for the record, the people of Kazakhstan who are definitely trying to become free, um, I would really hope we would, and the people of Siberia who are trying to be free and trying to separate, I would absolutely support them if there's ever any way we can, right? I think that as the borders are laid out on the planet right now, I would very much like to see them remain this way because in the past they have produced the most stability we have seen from anywhere. And I would like to see that continue. And part of that continuing is not changing borders arbitrarily or even threatening other people's sovereignty. So, what can we do about that? I mean, if you see a government that is trying to impose its will on another government, maybe don't support that government is really the best thing I can suggest. Now, when it comes to books on fascism, what I would highly actually recommend is I'm going to recommend some other YouTubers out there that have done fantastic work on simply asking the question of what fascism is and identifying fascism when you see it and then acting appropriately. Um, there are plenty of books written about the psychology of Germany in World War II. Highly recommend reading any of them you can get. There's just too many to mention. The other book I would really recommend is actually a graphic novel, and it's Maus, Maus. It is a graphic novel where it's more or less World War II, but instead of using Germans and Jewish people, they are using cats and mice. So I really recommend reading it. And, Yeah, I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments about what you feel um, about this subject, and whether you feel that we should be taking a closer look at the nature of these sort of movements and what attracts people to them, and what we can do to wake people up to those realizations, which is actually something I do think Helldivers does a fantastic job of trying to make people aware of it through the background story of a video game about, let's be honest, taking machine guns to alien scum, right? So I'd love to see more in the comments from you guys. In the meantime, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.